everybody, and welcome to the flute practice. Now, today's video is about an issue that I have seen cropping up quite a lot lately. I'm going to just say I have a very specific point of view on this, but I'm hopefully going to explain to you why I see it like this, and hopefully it'll make sense to you guys and encourage you guys to maybe change your mind on this. So many teachers teach that the B flat fingering is essentially this. So you put the B natural key down and you use what they call the long B flat. Now I understand why many teachers start teaching this fingering. It is the more difficult fingering of the fingerings that we do have. And it does make sense to kind of learn to use this fingering early on. But honestly, what I'm finding a lot is that a lot of students either only know this fingering, so they think this is the standard B flat fingering, or they get so used to this fingering when they finally start using the B flat key fingering, they find it very uncomfortable and difficult. And by that stage, usually kind of have developed a habit which is very difficult to break. So I'm going to set the record straight right now. In my opinion, this should be your normal B flat fingering, like I'd say probably about 90% of the time. This is the usual B flat fingering. It's faster, it's easier, it's better. If we're playing F major, it's kind of just like playing the B natural, except that you have the thumb in a slightly different spot. It just makes sense. Whereas if you're playing with this weird cross fingering, it's possible, and it certainly can be practiced up to a pretty good speed, but you're going to hit a limit at some point. You know, they made this modern flute, was made and designed and developed and progressed over the last couple of 100 years so that we could avoid doing crazy, complicated cross fingerings. So for me, it seems crazy to kind of say, well, yes, but except that one fingering we're going to use. No, we have an easy fingering. Let's use it. Now, there is a time and a place for the long B flat, and I'm going to go over that right now because that's the thing. The long B flat is meant as an alternative when the other B flat is not possible. So just to be very clear about how the B flat key works, when we are playing with the B flat key, we are able to keep it down pretty much the whole time. So if I am playing, for example, an F major scale, I can keep the B flat key on its spot and not have to move it. Now, there are two major exceptions, actually three, but the one's kind of like a doubled up thing. So the one exception, of course, is B natural. We obviously cannot play with the B flat key down when we need to play B natural. We have to have the B natural key on. The other big exception is the third octave F sharp. So the high F sharp, we have to have the B natural key on. We cannot have the B flat key down. And the last exception is kind of the high B natural. We need to have the B flat key off for that one, as well as there are other keys in between that need to be lifted. So of course, if those things crop up in music, we are going to need to have or switch over to the B natural key. Now, generally when we're kind of playing, we're looking for places that we can make this switch. And usually great places to make that kind of a switch is when we're playing any kind of C's or C sharps, because we're lifting the thumb away anyway, or things like high G. There are times where you can switch over kind of in between. You can do kind of a bit of slide across if you have the time, but this is not always possible. It's not always possible to slide, and this is where your alternative fingering is going to become important. So the one obvious case is when we're playing a B flat and a B natural next to each other, or if we're trilling. So obviously we need to use that long B flat. Makes total sense. There, sliding across here is impossible and a little bit ridiculous. So we want to keep the finger on that B natural, the longer key, and we get to use this finger here. Makes sense. Total sense. Of course, sometimes we don't have time to slide across, even if they're not necessarily next to each other, but perhaps we're playing a piece where, for example, there is no C in between. So perhaps we're doing something like this. So there I didn't really have a C in between where I could slide across, and it makes sense you might want to rather use the long B flat. Honestly, where I can and when I can, I like to slide across, more than not. Even if there isn't a very clear spot where I can slide across, I've learned to keep my finger quite light so that it slides quite easily. But of course, everyone has their different preferences here, and this is where we need to mark in our music when we're going to use the B flat and when we're not going to use it. So if I'm going to use the B flat key, I'm going to put a little plus sign into my music. And if I'm going to use the long B flat key, so I'm going to put my thumb off that B flat key, I'm going to use a little minus sign in the music. And along with breath marks, this is something that I absolutely mark in all of my music. There is one other little option which can be super useful, and that is this little kind of B flat trill key is what we call it. So it's this guy over here. And what's so nice about him is that you can actually play G and A with this key down still. So for example, if you're playing a really fast passage where you kind of are doing all kinds of crazy things and you need that key to be able to stay, you can keep him down. That kind of a thing, you can do it. So that is another nice little possibility, sometimes very useful. In the Bear Concerto, in the first movement, there is a little passage there that just, you can't really get through it, in my opinion, without this little key. Very, very helpful. So, if you have learnt that this is either the only B flat fingering or you're using this B flat fingering the whole time, I'm really going to strongly recommend that you stop doing that. Start practicing with the B flat key down. It should be the easier option. And the fact that many students find this more difficult, I find very problematic and concerning. So when I teach students, when I teach my beginners, I usually teach them both fingerings straight away, because the skill is not one or the other fingering. The skill is being able to switch between both and know when to use which one. And that is the difficult thing that needs to be learned straight away, not the difficult fingering. Okay guys, a bit more of a direct video today, but very important. If you guys are wanting to get really up to date with your technique, I'm going to encourage you guys, find me on Patreon, where we are busy doing a really cool scale workshop. And there are also some other nice practice resources and videos and stuff there that are not available to everyone else on YouTube. It's only for my patrons. It's a very, very, very cool space where you just really get more in depth with your playing. So I'm going to encourage you to go check that out. Other than that, drop some nice comments below. Did you learn to play B flat with the long fingering first? And I would love to hear some of your experiences with struggling between these two fingerings. Until then, everybody, happy practicing and see you next time.